Welcome to ABA Generalized, the podcast where we will bring a positive view to the world of applied behavior analysis.
We are your hosts, Erica, G, and Ann, here to share inspiring stories, practical tips, and share some of the latest research to help you thrive in your ABA practice.
Whether you're a seasoned professional, a student, or just curious about ABA, our goal is to spread positivity, foster a supportive community, and empower you to make a meaningful difference.
Every Monday, we'll dive into topics ranging from success stories to self-care strategies and professional growth.
Plus, we'll be featuring interviews with leading experts and real-life heroes in the field who are making an impact with their positive approach.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at ABA Generalized the pod and send us your thoughts, questions, or success stories to aba.generalized.podcast@gmail.com. Also, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
So grab your headphones, get comfortable, and join us for today's episode of ABA Generalized.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of ABA Generalized. Today, we're really excited. We have a special guest. We are thrilled to welcome Ashley. Ashley is a mom of two. She's also a BCBA, a previous regional director, and a successful entrepreneur. She owns her own ABA company. Ashley also brings a wealth of experience, not only in ABA, but also in balancing the demands of running a business while raising a family. With deep passion in helping children and families thrive, she is dedicated to her career and providing compassionate, effective behavioral support. So today we'll dive into her journey as a BCBA and her insights on balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship, and the vision behind her company and success. So welcome, Ashley.
Y'all are so sweet. That was such a sweet intro. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat more. I love chatting about ABA, and my husband's very grateful that I'm not talking to him about ABA. So thank you.
Yes. So I guess just to get going, so like what inspired you to pursue a career in ABA? How has your journey kind of shaped where you currently are at as a BCBA? How did it kind of all begin?
Yeah. So like many other people in this field, I did not aspire to be a behavior analyst one day. That was not a thing. I was actually pursuing a degree in elementary education. And I was working at my college's local daycare and filling in for another class when I met my first autistic little boy. I was just absolutely fascinated by him. It was actually the last day where you could switch your major before it would affect your graduation date. So I asked to leave early, ran to my advisor and was like, I need to switch my major today to special education. And she was like, maybe you should take a minute there and just think about that before you make such a drastic change here to special education. But I just felt like in my gut, like that's where I'm supposed to be. That's what I'm supposed to do. And then a few months after that, I think I was reading Let Me Hear Your Voice. And it was a book and it mentioned ABA. And I was like, whoa, what is that? That sounds like so much fun. Sign me up. So I applied for an ABA job in my local area. And this was way back in the day. This was like 15 years ago. So way before the RBT credential. In our state, we had line therapist and lead therapist. We also had the behavior analyst, but the line therapist was that entry-level ABA therapist. And then a lead therapist is more like our student analyst today. So they're pursuing board certification or they're just an experienced line therapist. So I saw my lead therapist once or twice a month. And I was given an address, go here. So no training whatsoever going into this.
Wow.
I did not meet my behavior analyst. I didn't even know that was a thing until 6 months in when she showed up one day and was like, I'm here to do an assessment. And I was like, who are you? What is this? And I was just like so lost. So when I like first got my first teaching job, I was like, yeah, that was fun, but that's just not for me. I'll pursue like OT or speech or something a little bit more legit. But my first year teaching was rough. It was in a very, very rural part of town. I had 17 students and I had 12 adult supports, which sounds amazing, but I had no earthly idea how to manage adult behavior. So it was extremely stressful. And then 15 out of 17 of my students had intense maladaptive behavior, like self-injurious behavior, really intense aggression. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was completely clueless. And one of my students had pretty intense self-injurious behavior that it led to permanent damage in his vision. So the school district hired a BCBA to come consult. And I was just like hanging on every single word he gave me. But looking back, he gave me the most generalized suggestions. He's like, use a autonomy system, do plan ignoring, which I'm thinking in my head now, like, why did I ever do plan ignoring for self-injurious behavior or like when it caused like permanent vision damage? But it was enough to get me hooked that I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to get my master's in ABA. And then I went on to be the BCBA for a local school district before transitioning into the home setting. So yeah, a wild ride to get here.
That's insane. And I mean, I know we've even talked about how, like, even training now isn't as good as it could be, especially for RBTs and coming into the field. But the fact that you were given an address and just told go, and you didn't even have like a contact person to be like, I get it. Like again, not maybe meeting the BCBA at first, but like to not even have a contact to be like, oh, who is this?
That's what my mom said. She's like, you can't just show up at a stranger's house. But I'm a dumb college student, so whatever. Safety, what?
Oh wow. My goodness. I can't even fathom the idea of sending one of my RBTs out without any support, any sort of training. And I know that Ashley, that's something that you and I have like talked about previously, just like the training needs in general. And I know G and I have gone into it too, but like, I know you probably advocate for it as well with your stuff. So,
my experience too, like, no one should ever have to go through that. And she was I remember my first day very clearly because she was going through the cold probe and DVT. And I left that 2-hour session and my head literally felt like it was spinning. Like, what? And then I didn't see her for a whole nother month. So I was like, what do I do here? Like,
oh my God.
How do I work with him? And thankfully,
I feel like that's how we get the stigma of babysitters out in settings because it's like, what are you doing? What?
Literally.
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah, a wild ride.
And especially if it's like a child that's just starting out with ABA and parents like, I don't know what you're supposed to be doing. And like, you have no idea oh my gosh, that's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
Well, so I guess Ashley, tell us a little bit about how you balance the demands of being a BCBA, mom, and an owner of your own company. And then along with that, what challenges do you face in these roles?
Everything. And if someone says here that they've got it mastered and they're a pro at this, they need to reach out to me because I feel like I'm still learning. But the biggest advice I could give is just know what resources you have available and then delegate and prioritize those tasks. I think in the helping professional field, we tend to say yes to so many things, but there's only so much that we can give at one time. So I try to be very, very mindful and kind of like rationalize like my resources. So as a mom, I've got to take care of my girls. Sometimes like there's been lots of moments in my life where like they're sick, they need me, it's just like total chaos at home. My client's having a hard time, they need me there like now, this second. And then like there's something going on the business side, claims are being denied, it's just a dumpster fire over there. So I really have to be smart with my resources. Can my husband watch the girls? Can someone step in and just help them? Can I reach out to the family and be like, hey, try this one quick thing. Let me schedule in a time sooner to come see you. May not be right now, but sooner. And then I can focus on the business side and make sure those claims or the authorization is all taken care of so everything can continue. So it's just mostly just being mindful about, what resources are available.
And did you learn that just from experience? Because I just feel like that's a difficult thing to
It's very challenging.
do.
It is trial and error. And I mess up all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I got way too hyper-focused on my client there. I completely dropped the ball with my girls. I completely forgot about this authorization or claim. And I just have to learn from those mistakes, give myself grace, and then just move on and try to do better next time. And don't beat yourself up.
You're a superhero because
no, I'm not.
Oh my gosh, stop it. Like just even thinking about when you were my boss, like you literally did it all. You still do it all. Like you juggle so, in my eyes, you juggle so beautifully, and like it seems seamless on my end at least. So you're doing
I'm glad to hear that. But I am human and I have very many meltdowns at home. Even sometimes at work, I will start bawling my eyes out and be like, this is enough. I've had enough. And it gets to be too much. So you have to stop and realize you only have 100% of this pie to give. You don't have 300%. So you can't give 100% to every single thing all at once. So you just have to be careful. Budget.
No, that's good to remember, because I feel like you can get away from that very easily.
Yes.
Especially, as you said, juggling multiple different roles as you're still, you're a mom, you're a caregiver, and everything else. So I guess the next question is kind of piggybacking off that. You may have already answered. So as both a business owner and a mother, what advice would you give other parents or professionals trying to achieve like a healthy work-life balance?
Well, first off, good luck. No, but whenever I hear that a BCBA is also a parent, I typically have like warning bells going off in my mind, because I know ratio strain is ahead. Because when we're in this helping professional, like I said, we want to say yes, and we want to give all of ourselves to everyone. So we really struggle with taking care of ourselves and making sure our needs are met. So I ask other BCBAs, or I have to ask myself, what is my schedule of reinforcement like? I know my client's schedule of reinforcement, and you may even know your kid's schedule of reinforcement, but what's your own schedule of reinforcement? So my favorite advice I've ever gotten was to find your favorite part or parts of the day. So have a very dense schedule of reinforcement and schedule it into your calendar, because I know your calendar is probably booked every single second of the day, but actually put it on your calendar, and then just be extra aware and present in that moment and try to soak up so much of that moment. And some days I get like a minute. Some days it's when I'm in the shower and I just feel like the hot water on me, and I have like my lavender soap and I just enjoy it for 1 minute. But my favorite time of day is the mornings, when like most of the house is clean, the girls are asleep, my husband's asleep, so the house is quiet. I have my hot cup of coffee with my peppermint milk creamer, and I can just like savor every single second of it. And I'm like, oh, this is good. This is the life. So really just making sure that you are coming into contact with that reinforcement. This is especially true for the home setting. So when you're driving in between sessions, this is where I get in trouble, because I can definitely start the day off right, but then when the day gets going, it starts to get really, really busy. And my mind will get so zoomed in on my kids' behaviors, my clients' behavior, that I am constantly thinking about ABA all day long. And I've said it to my husband so many times, like, I just can't think about ABA anymore. Like, I'm so done with ABA, because I'm analyzing my clients' behavior, and then I'm coming home and I'm analyzing my kids' behaviors. And it's just too much. I am way too saturated with behavior. So when I have those moments in the car, I have to be extra mindful and aware that I cannot worry about what just happened with my past client. I can't worry or try to prepare for my next session. I can't worry about my girls. This is my time. So I'll like blast my favorite music. I'll eat chocolate. I'll pick up my favorite cup of coffee, just something to get some contact of reinforcement where I'm not thinking about behavior, period. I also think it's challenging too for parents and BCBAs, especially when you're in the parent role and another professional or teacher knows that you're a BCBA. I have run into this a lot with my girls, where we just had our pediatric appointment, and the pediatrician said, well, what would you do in that situation? And I've learned, so when I was a first-time mom, I would be like, okay, BCBA brain, how are you going to analyze this? What are you going to do? What strategies are we going to implement here? And then I would feel like a failure whenever those strategies didn't work. And I'm like, oh my God, they're judging me. Like, no one's going to want to work with me because I'm a horrendous BCBA. But now I've learned I'm mom. That's my role to my girls. And that's it. I need to take this BCBA hat off. So I will always respond with, well, I'm mom. So I'm coming to you as a medical professional seeking support and guidance, because I'm not her BCBA. I'm her mom.
That's a really good point too. And like, I am a newer mom. I have a almost 10-month-old, and like, It is. It's like I even tried to actually put my ABA hat on the other day because I couldn't figure out sleep schedule and everything else, and I was trying to do data and everything. But you're right.
I know.
You kind of set yourself up for failure because you're like, oh, I know this. I could get these strategies, put in here and whatever. And it's different. It's very different.
It is. And that's where you're going to get in trouble too, because you're going to hit ratio strain. You're not going to be contacting reinforcement. You're just, all these demands are being thrown on you, and you're going to get exhausted trying to figure out, and what's the function here? What are going to be the strategies whenever you don't have clear vision right now? Your perspective is clouded with all of these emotions. There's no way. No, take that hat off. Your mom.
I feel like that's why you hear all the time, like from BCBAs specifically, that are moms,
yes,
not ABA your child. I have heard that over and over and over. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, maybe you could. I don't see why that would be a problem. But now hearing it like from your perspective, like that makes sense. Like I try to ABA my dogs. It does not work. And I don't know if it's been my dogs, if it's me, or if it's a combination. Like
it's your dogs.
If you ever met Wawa and Brady, it would make sense. They just don't. We were on a walk earlier. Sorry to kind of go on like a little tangent, side conversation, we were on a walk this morning actually, and Brady has been terrible about like just barking at other dogs. So I was trying to explain to Scott, because he brought some treats with him. I was like, you can give him like treats when he's following the directions, not so it has to be him sit, leave it, and watch me. Then he can get the treat, as long as he's doing all of that. But he cannot get the treat if he has already reacted to the dog in between all of that, because then you're reinforcing that behavior. And he's like, well, okay. So then he does it. And I was like, Scott, that was really great. And I was like, he's going to hate me for praising him right now. But I thought it was
it's a very similar conversation that we have in our home. We just had it today on the car ride home, but ours are with the girls, like, Gracie, you cannot give Millie that toy whenever she's screaming like that, because she's only going to scream more. We have that conversation all the time.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one.
And then I had to go into satiation and deprivation and all that stuff. And then that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, all right, we're done with this conversation then.
Listen, people, knock it off with the vocabulary at home. Come on.
I can't help it. Anywho's. So Ashley, I know that this isn't your first ABA company that you have started. So what motivated you to even start ABA companies, and what were some of the biggest hurdles you've encountered during the processes?
So the first time I opened up my company, it was purely selfish. I definitely didn't go into it thinking, oh, I can do it better than this other ABA providers. There are some really wonderful ABA providers in this area. So I definitely did not think, oh, I can do this better. I was working for another company at the time, and I simply just wasn't getting enough hours. So financially, I really had nothing to lose at that point. Like, that was it. And I felt very stagnant as a BCBA in my growth. And for me, my number one reinforcer is growth and being in a very uncomfortable situation. And as you can imagine, starting your own company or even running your own company is extremely uncomfortable. And it's going to be many, many opportunities for growth. So I originally went into it just that way. But now that I've reopened it, it's moved more towards, I want to provide a model to the caregivers and empowering them. Yeah, so it's evolved.
I love that.
Oh, and then the challenges. You said the challenges too. There's so many. When I first started, I had a strong foundation on the authorization process. The clinical side, of course, I knew how to do that. But when it came to claims, that was very, very challenging for me. So the billing part was very challenging. And when you own your company and you do billing, you typically go two routes. You can either do it yourself or you can hire a biller. A lot of people will do it themselves in the beginning and then hire a biller later on so they know the process and then they can verify like everything's correct. And that was my mindset going into it. The first few claims that were denied and I just didn't know how to correct them. I lost a lot of money in them, but I saw it as more of like an investment in learning how to bill and then quickly learn from those mistakes so I could get paid.
Well, and that's like really nice to hear too, because I do feel like a lot of people who start their own ABA companies kind of start it because they've had a crappy experience, with an ABA company. It's like, and as you just said, like, I can do it better. I don't want to be in this environment, so I'm just going to do it myself. Mm-hmm. So I think that you already went in with it, like with an upper hand, because you didn't go in with it with anger and like,
no resentment.
Like, you were happy. You were just like, let's do this. Let's figure it out.
I really encourage BCBAs. Like if you feel like you want to start your own thing or have your own company, I say go for it. I really admire the psychology and counseling area. My friend's a licensed counselor. She owns her own business. And you see that a lot where there's a lot of counselors who have their own practice. And there's no competition there whatsoever. Everyone's supporting each other. And I really encourage that with behavior analysts. I think there's a lot of companies out there. There are a lot of companies that are doing similar things where they're trying to compete with one another. And I'm like, you guys just stay in your own lane, do what makes you happy.
And I think that's kind of why ABA is getting such a bad rap right now, is because, like all of that's a really good point that you just made of like therapists and like, people helping with mental health. Like they're not competing with each other. They're honestly referencing, here's my friend. I'm not working for you. Here's this person, that person. But with ABA, I feel like you never hear, oh, hey, we're not the right company for you. Why don't you try this person who, might be? I feel like you're not hearing that because it's all a competition. And it's like, no, I want your business and it's a battle. And that sucks.
And I think needs to goes to like the internal part too. So like if you think about it, like internally, so if you have a client that maybe might not be the best fit for you, but like then you have all these other BCBAs with full caseloads, you can't move them. So then you're not, I hate to use the word stuck, but like you kind of are stuck with having this family that might not be the best fit for you, or they might not be, you might not have the greatest skill set for them. And so it can't be shuffled around, or, then there has to be that shuffling game. But like, I do agree. I think that has a lot to do with like, just that internal difficulty, but then like, why don't we do it like that? Why don't we do it how like
it's not like we've got all these BCBAs and RBTs and not enough families. There's so many families seeking support. It is so unnecessary. That was one thing, and I still say it to families who contact me today. I'm like, I have a whole list. I said, I'm going to email you the whole list. I said, you need to call every single person on this list, get on every single wait list, and you need to go with the person and the provider that you think is going to be the best fit for you and your family. And if you go with that person and they do come out, or you go to their clinic and you think it's not a good fit, you just say, I'm sorry, I don't think it's working. And then you've got options waiting behind you with the wait list. It's kind of like dating. You have to find the right fit for your family. So this isn't like a marriage. We're not going to be together for the rest of our lives here. So just really find out what works best for you and your family.
So I think this leads really nicely into our next question of like, just how do you differentiate your ABA company from others in the field?
Yeah. So originally when I started the company, I didn't. I don't think I did very much. I had an RBT. We were doing like the typical tiered model. I think one thing that was a little bit different is I was doing the skill-based treatment, which was fairly new in my area. There weren't a lot of providers doing it because I was having to explain that a lot to families. And to my RBT, like, what is this? It doesn't make any sense. Why are you giving them what they want when they say my way? So that was new. And now that I've reopened my company, I am definitely doing a very different model. I do not have an RBT. It is just me as a BCBA doing direct service, but I heavily focus on caregiver empowerment. So I'm definitely not a good fit for all families. So when they contact me and they're like, I need help in a daycare, that's not me. I'm working with a family unit. I am working on helping you and guiding you on your responses with your loved one. And I'm working directly with your loved one to teach and practice some skills. So that's definitely changed a ton. And then what was the rest of that question? I can't remember what you just said.
No, I think that was it. Just how you differentiate. Yeah, no, you answered it great.
Okay, good.
Just how you differentiate, because yeah, I think that's important. That again, you don't want to be competing, but that's an awesome model. That isn't something that I think we normally see in ABA, but I do think that it would be helpful. Like I have a few clients that I can think of right now that like, they're near graduation, they don't really need help. Mom and dad are really involved. And they really just need the training to finish up ABA and like, how do we move forward? Or, I'm sure you do it at different points of their ABA journey, but like that, that's just the clients I'm thinking of right now is like, yeah, they could have really just used a BCBA to like, let's sit down, let's figure this out, let's make a plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's an awesome and very different model, but definitely will have people that need that.
It's fun.
So then how has your experience as a parent influenced your approach to ABA, particularly when working with these families?
Oh my goodness. Well,
loaded question, I guess.
Oh my goodness, I could talk on and on. But I do think it's important to mention that I don't think you need to be a parent to be a phenomenal analyst. I've seen that a lot too, where I think sometimes self-confidence is hit as an analyst whenever you're not a parent. I think sometimes parents also sometimes look down like, oh, you're not a mom, you don't get it. Do not think that's true in the least, but I've worked with some phenomenal analysts and they're not parents, and I greatly admire them. So I don't think it's a prerequisite to being an amazing professional in this field. But for me personally, it drastically changed where I was headed in this field. Once I became a parent, you start to feel the shame, the guilt, the worry, the fear, like all these hard emotions. So what my families that I was working with, what they were feeling, I was feeling. What they're experiencing, those barriers, those hard, challenging moments, I was experiencing. Whenever I became a parent to a special needs child, I was experiencing that grief process too. And before that happens, like, oh my gosh, that's tough, that's hard. But whenever you're in that moment, that's when you realize like, oh my gosh, no, I did not know what it was like. Like you really experiencing it takes it to a whole nother level. And there's one moment where like, I know for sure it changed my trajectory where I was going in this field. It was an RBT and myself, we were on a new team and it was with a new client, brand new to ABA. And I was just supervising the RBT, standing back with mom, trying to avoid reactivity the best I could. And I noticed like mom had tears in her eyes. So I pulled her into another room and I'm like, what's going on? Like, do you have concerns? And oh my gosh, I'm trying not to cry because it still impacts me so much. She was like, I just have so much joy and pride seeing my son overcome all these challenges. He's using words in a meaningful and functional way. She's like, I'm so happy, but I'm so just glad that he's overcoming this. But at the other side of that, she's like, I just feel so much guilt and failure and shame because I'm his mom and I should be the one connecting with him like that. I should be the one guiding him through this. And I'm not. And she's like, I'm failing as a mom. And to hear another mom say that and just feel like they're failing when they do have all the answers, they know their child the best. Like if anyone in this world, it's you, mom, you can definitely do it. So that's when it clicked for me that we're not investing in our caregivers enough. We're not in the least bit. And at the time when this was happening, the research out there was use BST. And I'm like, well, great. That tells me how to teach them, but what am I teaching them here? And it was just the Ruby curriculum at the time. And it was a good foundation, but it still left like this gap between here's our treatment plan and here are the caregivers implementing this treatment plan with fidelity and confidence. And it wasn't happening. And it's in that moment when it clicked for me that, mom's critical here, the RBT is critical in here, mom wants to be like the RBT. Why aren't we training the parents and teaching the parents these basic behavior principles that RBTs know and are expected to know?
Yeah, I had several parents that, throughout my years, like just ask, like, can they go through the RBT training? Like, yeah, like, can they just go through the 40 hours so that they do understand the vocabulary and just like the baseline of things? Like, Why not?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's where like it completely changed the game for me. And I started focusing more on, I'm still explaining and teaching the caregivers, this is how we're going to respond to the behaviors, but I started teaching them the underlying behavior principles there too. So that why was connected. This is how it's working. And then a really cool thing that happened where now the caregivers are getting this knowledge of the behavioral principles and they're taking that and they're running with it and they're using it flexibly. And the coolest moment has been whenever parents are using those behavioral principles, like, oh my gosh, Ashley, I just implemented a training procedure with him and this is what happened. And I'm like, oh, show me the door. I'm out of here. This is amazing. So, I mean, all of my like parent training lessons completely like morphed into that. So yeah, just, the caregiver.
That's probably one of the questions that I do get too is like, how can I learn what the RBTs are learning? And I know our company allows for parents to do that.
Yes.
Or I should say my current, for clarification, allows for like the parent to take the training course, which is awesome. So I think like that is helpful. What's up?
Because why not? Like, why not give them the knowledge and the vocabulary? Like, it's going to help them, especially if the parent is willing to learn and willing to participate and be that invested.
Yes.
Why not?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I love it.
So we only have a few questions left. We are, starting to get to the end, but I do want to ask, like, just in ABA field in general, like, what do you believe is like the biggest challenge in ABA right now?
I think just overall adaptability. I think our field needs to be a little bit more adaptable to things and a little bit faster than how we've been adaptable. I've seen tremendous and beautiful change come these past 5 years on the strategies we're using, the way we're approaching behaviors and our clients. Like all the different like parent training curriculums out there are amazing. There's just so much more support, but I'm still seeing our field kind of rigid with, there's so much research backing up this one strategy. We need to stick with this. And we just need to let go of our grasp a little bit and be flexible with how we're these things, not saying that research is wrong, just there's probably a better way to go about this. And then I think telehealth has been like a very big hot topic since COVID. And I think we need to be adaptable with how we're responding to that and using that, because I'm seeing a lot of professionals where they're like, team telehealth, anti-telehealth, and it's not black and white. There's so much gray matter here. I remember during COVID, I had, my clients all had to go telehealth. And I had families who were thriving and like the caregivers were given that opportunity to work with their child and just thrive with it. And then the other side where they're like, I'm really struggling, I need more support. And in those cases, telehealth did not work. So I think we need to be adaptable and flexible with the mode of services. And then I think also our service delivery model. With my previous role, I was responsible for hiring and going to the career fairs. And one thing I saw were a lot of neurodiversity groups, which was amazing because they're creating this atmosphere of acceptance and support in a very stressful time of life. But I also think it's making an impact on the amount of RBTs we are getting in our field. So I think we need to be adaptable with how we're utilizing our resources that we have to meet the demands and support our local communities.
Agreed. And I think it's just kind of piggybacking off of that, like being a little clearer about what we do and in our field too, because I mean, just from what I've seen in the most recent, like couple years, even months, people come on and then they're like, oh, this is the job. Oh, I did not expect that. And then they're gone within like a week. Yes. Or that's their last session, or they're like, I'm not coming back after an hour working with a kid. Like,
yes,
I think just being clearer about what we do in this field is going to go a long way.
Yeah. And investing back into the RBTs too. They need more training. They need more support. Like it's a very tough job. It is very demanding. And I remember when I did go back for my graduate degree, someone told me, you're either going to sink or swim with ABA. You're going to love it or hate it completely. Like there's no in the middle. For me, obviously it was love. Absolutely obsessed.
Otherwise, you wouldn't still be here working in it. I'm sure your little hiatus too was like crawling.
It definitely helped. It definitely helped taking a year off where I was like, okay, no, I appreciate that. I miss that. Being a stay-at-home mom is not for me.
It's like where I'm at right now. I get it.
Mm-hmm. It's that schedule reinforcement.
And so I guess so this is our last question before we wrap up. So ABA has sometimes been misunderstood or criticized. How do you ensure that your approach to ABA is positive and individualized? And what strategies do you use to make the experience enjoyable and empowering for clients and families? Another loaded question, sorry.
It's a very loaded question, but it's an important question. I remember whenever I heard for the first time, like ABA is abusive, I had a graduate student approach me and she's like, so how do you respond when the autistic community says that ABA is abusive? I was like, what? ABA is the gold standard to autistic, therapy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, absolutely not. There's so much research that backs it up. And I was so defensive. And looking back, like, I really wish I wasn't as defensive. I really wish I would have just taken the time to consider it. But I definitely had sleepless nights, like worrying, like, am I being abusive? Like, have I hurt my previous clients? Am I hurting my current clients? Like, what do I do here? And I think sitting in that hurt and really truly listening to the experiences from the autistic community helped me move from a place of rigidity. We need to do these strategies. This is the only way to do it, to being flexible with, well, what other strategies are out there? And so now my services are definitely very closely, heavily looked at with skill-based treatment and then acceptance and commitment training. Whenever I have a family start with me, I have a pretty lengthy conversation about assent, what assent looks like for their loved one, especially whenever their loved one is non-vocal. What does it look like whenever they're withdrawing that assent? And I explain how I respond whenever that assent is withdrawn, but the parent consent is not withdrawn. I also heavily look at coming at it through a passionate approach and working to teach advocacy skills and autonomy. So the client can be as individualized as they want to in the community and not teaching them these specific behaviors to get them accepted or a part of society as a whole. So just teaching them like flexible behaviors.
Yeah. No, and I think that's super important too, just that whole assent-based everything, because with the negativity surrounding ABA of being, like you said, abuse and all that stuff with some people that have, and we've had a whole episode on that, on how, unfortunately, like the elephant in the room, right, is just talking about the negative aspects of ABA and how can we try and change that, and how can we as BCBAs, RBTs, make it more positive for everyone to really understand. And obviously that's the whole point of our podcast as well. So I do completely agree with, making sure it's assent, making sure that everyone is on the same page, making sure you're following with like appropriate strategies as well. So, but I could go on and on just like you.
I know I could too. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to keep you up all night editing.
Oh, good.
Short and sweet.
But Ashley, we are so grateful to have had you on. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences throughout your ABA journey, and as you continue, being the amazing person that you are. So thank you all for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ABA Generalized, the podcast, is not providing professional advice. Please seek a professional in your area for specific advice and support.